everyone, so we're just going to get straight on today with the tutorial. We've got lots to fit in, and what I'm going to be showing you is lots of ways to use vellum in your crafty projects, especially your journals. And so the first technique we're doing here is heat embossing. A fantastic technique to use on vellum. Vellum's perfect for this. And we're doing several different techniques within a technique here. So we're doing embellishments, we're doing background stamping, and we're making some word labels. So you'll see that I'm stamping using the Versamark ink, and I'm doing the whole page. If you're going to do some heat embossing, it's easier to do just a full page all at once, because getting out the powders and things can be a messy job. So do a full sheet at once. You're more productive if you batch make things rather than backwards and forwards and doing different things. You're going to waste less paper. Okay, you're going to actually waste less embossing powder as well doing it this way. Okay, because you're only getting it out and making a mess the once. Because you inevitably do get stray powder and you're going to lose some every time you use it. Not a big deal. It's not over expensive, and here I'm using white. You can use any colour. There is an absolute rainbow of colours of embossing powder. So try and dry it from underneath and keep the heat tool moving. That's how you'll get a good finish. If you have the heat tool too close and on the top, then you can bubble your embossing powders. And when it starts to bubble, then it's not a nice look. It doesn't give a smoother, glossy look. You can tell when it's cooked because it completely changes colour. So like I say, we've got several techniques here. We've got labels, we've got some background stamping, and we've got some embellishments, and we've done it all at once. So I'm cutting out my background stamping because I'm going to use that later. You can tear them up and use them for layers. The labels I can just cut by hand, and the other items I can punch. Vellum punches beautifully. With a decent weight of punch, you'll have no problem. And as you can see there, I've got a heap of items all ready to go in next to no time. Now it's really important to put your embossing powder away before you do anything else, because you will knock it over or you will sneeze on it and you will end up in a hot mess. Also, it does tend to get everywhere as well. So put it away, put the lid on, make sure that your space is clear, and get on to the next task. So we're going to do some more embossing now. There's a bit of a break in the video here because I can't decide which stamp to use. I always try and use generic things so that you can see that you can make things without spending a fortune. So I'm away at the other side of my craft room at the moment, hunting for a stamp that I got free from a magazine. You don't have to spend a fortune with expensive craft companies buying stamps. Look for them on eBay, look for them on Amazon. Just make sure when you're getting your clear stamps that you pick photopolymer in the description and not silicone. Silicone stamps are very low grade, low quality, and you won't always get a really good impression. So that's my best advice. You don't have to spend a lot, but make sure it says photopolymer rather than silicone. So I think I've finally decided which stamp set I'm going to use now. And I'm going to teach you, might not be teaching you anything new, but I'm going to show you a technique called Watercolor Emboss Resist. So again, we can use our vellum, and vellum is fantastic for watercolouring, believe it or not, because it's not an absorbent kind of paper, so you wouldn't think it would be any good for watercolouring, but it's actually the complete opposite. Because the watercolour sits on it and then you dry it off, you get that fantastic water droplet look. So here I'm trimming down because what I'm going to do is I'm batch making. So I'm going to add my stamps to my block, and I always buy bigger blocks rather than smaller blocks, and that's because then you can stamp more than one thing at once. So I've added the ones that I'm going to use. I've used a dust buddy there. What that does is that makes sure that you don't have static on your paper, so that when you add your powder, it's sticking to the ink rather than your fingerprints on the paper, basically. But it's not essential, it just helps. So there you go, you can see I'm batch making, so I'm stamping, I'm filling that page, well, that offcut, and now I'm going to use clear embossing ink. You can use a coloured one if you want. I just decided to use clear to show you this technique, and it's a really fun technique. And again, make sure you put your powder away. I forgot this time, and I actually mixed it in with my white embossing ink by accident. But never mind, you live and learn. Again, set it from the bottom, and you can see it there turning. When it's cooked, it will go really shiny. Excuse me. I tried to speed it up and do a voiceover to avoid me coughing and sneezing, but I might still have the odd cough as we go, so I do apologise. So watercolouring, you don't have to have watercolour paint. You can use any water-based ink, Stampin' Up inks for example, or your Tim Holtz Distress inks. So the Stampin' Up ones, you can just smoosh the lid on the older ones, and it transfers some to the inside of the lid. You add a bit of water, use a watercolour brush and smoosh it over. With the Tim Holtz one, I've just added some to a stamp block there, or a bit of silicone matte or whatever, your glass matte. So what I'm doing here is I'm colouring over the entire leaf with a light colour and making it have pools of water, and then you get the darker colour on your brush and just touch it into the pools of water, and you'll see it kind of like suck into the pools of water. I can't think of a technical word for it, and it gives you a really good variation of colour without being some kind of artistic expert knowing about colour and depth and contrast. It just works, and it just does it for you. And then when you dry it, you get this fantastic water droplet look. And then of course you can fussy cut them. Now don't be scared to fussy cut, okay? Lots of people either can't be bothered or they're a bit worried about it. But it's so easy. All you do is start cutting, and the trick is to move your paper rather than the scissors as much as you can. Sometimes you have to move the scissors. But so long as you don't have any, technical problems with your hands, I can't think of the word, any motor skill problems, there's no reason you can't fussy cut. You don't have to buy expensive dies for everything. Good old pair of scissors and a little bit of patience. So there you can see those. I am going to cut the rest out, and I will show you them all. There you go. So here's another technique, stamping on vellum. You just need to use either an archival or a StazOn. Those are my two best choices for stamping on vellum. And if you just stamp off, which means put your ink on your stamp it on some scrap, then stamp the vellum, you'll get a more faded, vintage kind of look, but you can stamp on it. And that makes lovely little word labels. Next technique, printing. You can print on vellum. Just check that it's a printable vellum, suitable for your printer, either inkjet or laserjet. You can use the sheets just like as a journal page if you're making journals. Fold it in half, you've got a page, beautiful. But what we're going to do here is we're going to make some envelopes and pockets. So I'm using my good old envelope punch board. I can't recommend this tool enough. If you don't have one, it's well worth the money. Okay, and I'm going to create myself some vellum envelopes. Now you can have them tall like that and just leave the lid open like that. Okay, everybody's calling them house pockets at the moment. It's just an open topped envelope. Or you can turn it into a full envelope. Now don't be worried about using glue on vellum. A lot of people are worried, oh well, can you see the glue? The trick is to be very, very sparing with the glue. I use a fine tip glue pen, a kind of glue that dries clear, and less is more. Don't use PVA, it will wrinkle it. There's too much water in it. So yeah, but there's absolutely no reason you cannot use glue on vellum. Just be very, very sparing, and just be patient and wait for it to dry. So here I'm just making a very basic, like coin envelope type thing. So you see me trying to work out how big I want it. So I think I scored it at 1/2 inch, then 3.5, and then another 3.5. So yeah, very, very simple, very basic, but it's going to make a lovely pocket because whatever you put in, you're going to be able to see through. And I like the idea of being able to see all the layers in my journals. So using vellum with this lovely opaque look is just perfect. And I have printed it with one of my background papers. It's super pretty. So another way you can adhere vellum is with just tape. Tape's brilliant. It works perfectly fine. I'm using tape on mine. There you go. I'm rounding the corners there. So yeah, I'm using tape. Just make sure that you've not got that your tape's not too wide. So if you've got a 1/2 inch score, make sure your tape's smaller than 1/2 inch. Then it's not sticking out and sticking things down that you don't want stuck down. But it works fine. I make myself a lovely little coin type envelope there. Decided I needed a bigger thumb notch. So the next technique we're going to do is dry embossing. So that's using an embossing folder, and this gives a great effect on vellum, because as you can see there, it raises the vellum and gives it an almost like a raised chalky look. It's really beautiful to emboss, dry emboss is vellum. So there you go. So here now I'm just going to use all of those components that we've learnt how to make to decorate some elements for my journal. So I'm decorating a tag, I'm going to decorate the envelope, and then I'm going to add some things to the embossed envelope after the video's finished. So your vellum, you can use in lots of ways. You're adding texture, you're adding interest, you're adding layers. It really shouldn't be underestimated. It's not expensive, and it's great to use as an accent for any crafty product. I especially like the watercolour resist technique. It makes for beautiful, beautiful embellishments. You're using it to make for your card making. It's just stunning. You can really not go wrong with it. And also, as you can see there, I just shaped that flower a little bit. Vellum will hold its shape a little bit better than your standard paper if you want a tiny little bit of dimension in whatever it is you're making. So there you go. So on the envelope here, again, we're just going to add layers. Lots of layers. Layers are important for journal making because it's what draws the eye and it's what adds interest. So again, we're just going to use a variety of the items that we've made and add them just like collage. But it's just so much more interesting than just ripping up everything just from the journal kit. So it may be, you know, a little bit of extra effort, but it's well worth playing with vellum. So there you go. We're going to have a recap in a moment because you'll be surprised what you've learned from this video. You might not realise, but you've learned about 10 different things to do with vellum. Okay, just a quick recap. So with these 3 little projects that I've shared with you, you've actually learnt 10 different techniques with vellum, or 10 ways of using vellum in your journal making or any other crafty project. So what have we learnt today? We've learned you can print on it. You just need to make sure that you check that the vellum you're purchasing is ideal for your printer, either inkjet or laserjet. Most will tell you. We've learnt that because we can print on it, we can make journal pages. Beautiful, beautiful pages for your journals, okay? Also, you can then make envelopes and pockets, tucks, absolutely anything, just the same as you would normal paper once it's been printed on. Or you don't even have to print on it. You can dry emboss, okay, which is using your embossing folders and putting it through your whatever kind of machine you use, either a Big Shot or similar, or if you don't have one, you can emboss using a rolling pin and lots of pressure. You can heat emboss on it using either coloured embossing powder. I used white, you could use gold, bronze, you could use a coloured, you could use black, you can use any. Just make sure that you keep the heat tool moving and preferably heat it from underneath. I showed you how to do clear embossing watercolour resist, which is a lovely technique, as you can see by the lovely colour of these leaves here. It gives you a lovely watercolour effect, and vellum is beautiful for watercolouring on, believe it or not. Even though it doesn't absorb the water, it sits on the vellum and then dries with a lovely water effect. You've also learned that you can do your own stamped backgrounds. Okay, so you can get a plain sheet of vellum, not printed on, stamp your own background, either heat emboss it all or use a suitable ink such as archival or stays on. Just wait for it to dry. If it's archival, stays on will dry straight away. You can stamp labels and words onto clear vellum or printed vellum, and to get another lovely effect we made some little stamped labels like these. Okay, you can make elements and then rip it up. It rips beautifully, and use it for your tatty layering. One more last important thing that we've learned is it's a different kind of texture. So you're adding, by adding layers, you're adding texture to whatever you're making for your journals, and texture adds interest. So there you go, you've actually learned 10 things today. You might not realise it, but there you go. And I'm sure that you can take at least 1 or 2 of these ideas away and use them in your own creating. So thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.